Welcome, everyone, to In the Zone. We had a week off. Now we're back. Pete has been traversing the southwest United States looking for tornadoes and rocket blasts. Pete, why don't you tell us how your trip was real quick, and then we're going to jump into this. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds here to go because we're going to rip off today. We got so much stuff to talk about, so much stuff to do.
All right, missed the big one, caught the small one, and saw some trains along the way.
Excellent. Excellent. So we're going to start off this week, obviously, Pete, with Feed 'em Fish in the segment, and we're going to talk about the portal, transfer portal, just quickly. And so we look at the portal a little bit for different reasons, and this is something, again, that I think was a punt by the NCAA. They didn't want to handle it. They went and handled it this way, and now you have something significant has broken out. It's not positive. It's not great. So this year we cracked over 2,000 names in the portal.
Wow.
From students all over Division I, II, and III. And in Division I, if you add up the 363 teams, multiply that by the 13 scholarships that they have, you're somewhere probably in the 4,000 range. So you're looking at 1,200, 1,300 students in Division I who've put themselves into the portal. That's not healthy for the game. That's a way, way too high percentage. And again, the NCAA has also diminished some of the rules around transferring as far as sitting for the year. Transferring now, we see in-conference transfers happening all the time. Just wanted to go through a little bit of that today. We have also gone to cards, Pete, because we're very sophisticated now. We've taken In the Zone to a number of different levels here, but we're in the cards now. We've got a bunch of cards. If we make it through all of these cards in 1 hour, it's going to be absolutely amazing. So when we talk about the portal, I wanted to start out with just one simple fact for everybody. It's not a portal. It's an elevator.
Ooh, okay, that's an interesting concept.
You can go up and you can go down. And now here's a couple of different facts for you from my first card. 15 plus points. What percentage of the portal comes into their new school and averages over 15 plus points? 5.3%. That's not unusual because 15 plus points is fairly high statistically. But as we get into the rest of these numbers, it's going to tell you something. Between 10 and 14.9 points, you have 13.5% of the portal registering in that vein. From 5 points to 9.9 points, 22.8% of the portal is in that range. When we go from 0 points to 4.9 points, 52.3% of the portal winds up in that range.
So these are guys average per game is what you're talking about.
These are the number of points that they would have averaged on the transfer. Yep. And now we go into the other statistic, which was a little bit staggering, was the DNA statistic, which is did not attend any college after they went into the portal at all, is higher than the 15-plus number. It's at 6%. So I thought that was interesting.
So those guys are getting out of the game? They enter the portal, nobody picks them up, and then they're out?
6%.
Wow.
6%. Now, some of that could be for due to various different reasons, but 6%, more than the percentage of people that go in and score 15 points or greater.
Right.
So we're seeing some shifting there as well. It'll be interesting to watch that in the future. In the zone, Pete, we've given a set list that we've gone through. We've given 2 songs every single week. I want to get it out of the way right now. Just in review. First song we gave out was Wavelength by Van Morrison. Second one was Try and Love Again by the Eagles. Third song we gave out was This Old Cowboy by the Marshall Tucker Band. And the fourth one we gave out was You Don't Know Me by Ben Folds. Interesting little set list we got going here.
Yep.
Here's 5 and 6. This one is called The Hole of the Moon by the Waterboys. And how we're trying to bend this set list is into songs that you probably haven't heard a whole lot before, but we like and we think they're really good songs. The 6th one we got in the hole, I can't believe it took us to get to number 6 before I went into my Bruce Springsteen basket, but we're going to go with it. And I'm going to say, I'll Work For Your Love off the Magic album is an unbelievable song. And I think that Springsteen is out on tour right now. His whole, when you look at the whole of everything, when you look at the whole of the moon with Bruce Springsteen, you can't say that he's not the greatest rock and roll artist of all time. That's where I'm at. I think he's the GOAT. But we'll move on from that as well. We got cards all over the place. The 23 lottery for the NBA is approaching. May 16th is the date for that. These are the teams that are currently eligible for that lottery: Detroit, Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, Portland, Orlando, Indiana, Washington, Utah, Dallas, Chicago, Oklahoma City, Toronto, and New Orleans. In the Zone is going to make a prediction right now that the Toronto Raptors, although their odds are very, very long, the Toronto Raptors will wind up with the number 1 pick, and they will draft Victor Wembanyama from France. That's my prediction from In the Zone this week.
Mark the tape.
Put it down. Write it down.
6 minutes and 20 seconds into the show, you called your shot.
I'm calling Toronto. Gets a little bit of help here, and if it happens, I'll tell you the reason after it happens for the reason that I think that it's going to happen. All right? Right now, if you're a basketball fan, you have to be in absolute, utter delirium about the way the NCAA playoffs is going right now. It is absolutely the best basketball the NBA's put on in a really, really long time. The playoffs are always exciting with the NBA, but you have the commissioner sitting at home hoping, begging that some of these things turn out to be going the right way, because if they do go the right way, the NBA will have one of the best playoff setups that it's had in a very, very long time. Let me explain what I'm talking about. The Miami Heat have knocked off the number 1 seed Bucks. The Knicks took care of the Cavaliers 4-1. That's the setup in the first game. I love the fact that they don't reshuffle the deck chairs in the NBA, meaning once that happened, the Bucks would get eliminated, and then the Heat would then have to play the next highest seed available because they were the lowest seed available. I like that the fact that the Knicks and the Heat are going to slug it out in the East there. I think that's going to be a great, great series, and it also adds a little flair to the NBA, keeping New York in there. This is the first time the New York Knicks, my hometown New York Knicks, have advanced out of the first round in 10 years, I believe. So it's exciting. The Garden has been rocking. The games have been great. They look good against the Cavaliers, too. I thought the Cavaliers would give them a little bit more trouble than they did. But the Knicks are playing at a high level. And the addition of Jalen Brunson has been huge. His point guard play has been absolutely fantastic. Set it up with the Heat. The Heat suffered a pretty bad injury with Victor Oladipo getting hurt. But I think when you have Jimmy Butler, Kyle Lowry, and some of the other good pieces that they have, I think they have a real good chance here, because they took the Bucks apart with some really good defense, and they really, really have some offensive juggernauts. Jimmy Butler is about as tough a cover as there is in the NBA. So I think that that's shaping up well. Where the NBA is going to enjoy this round and maybe not enjoy the second part of this is that now you have the 76ers and the Celtics locked up in the next series. And when you have the 76ers and the Celtics locked up in the series, you probably, arguably, have the 2 best teams. Despite their seeding, I think those are the 2 best teams coming into the playoffs right now. They're going to play each other in this round, and then one of them will be eliminated, one of them moves on. But I think that's shaping up to be an absolutely fantastic series. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think Jason Tatum is the most versatile player in the NBA right now. The Celtics are playing at a very, very high level, but I think that Jason Tatum's playing at a really, really high level right now. They still haven't taken care of the Atlanta Hawks yet, though. So I know everybody's excited. We probably get to the 76ers, but the Celtics threw a game away the other night, 13-point lead, hasn't been done in a really long team, against a team that was facing dismissal, against a team that was facing elimination. And so right now you've got, the Celtics in a dogfight over there.
There's your bracket. There's a bracket there, and I'm showing the scoreboard.
Yeah,
each of the scores.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep, and what you see now is the 76ers are sitting home getting well rested. Embiid has had some different injuries that have plagued him throughout the year. He has so many miles on him during the year. They rely on him for so much. such a valuable piece of what they do. So the rest here is really, really good for Joel Embiid and the Sixers in general. Plus, you can now sit back, but again, not really know who you're going to play in the next round. So you got to prepare for both teams. The Hawks have been resilient. They're tough, and that shot that Trae Young hit at the end of the game the other night was absolutely a dagger. It was absolutely a great shot that kept their team alive, and now they're coming back home to Atlanta with a chance in Game 6. So I think the Celtics are going to take care of business tonight. I think they'll do it in convincing fashion. I think the 76ers locked up with the Celtics in that game is absolutely fabulous. When it gets to the West, it gets even more exciting. You have the Nuggets and the Suns right now. The Nuggets were the number one team in the Western Conference, but I think you're going to see right now, I would venture to say, I haven't looked at it, but I would venture to say that the guys out in Vegas probably have the Suns favored to win this series. I think the addition of Kevin Durant absolutely makes a huge, huge difference for this team. When you add Devin Booker and the other pieces that they have here, I think Booker's playing as well as anybody in the NBA right now. Him and Jason Tatum, I think, right now going East Coast, West Coast are two of the most well-performing players in the NBA right now, and it's exciting to watch. But now add Kevin Durant into that mix and Chris Paul. They just have a really good setup there. I love DeAndre Ayton, their big guy inside. The Nuggets are going to have their hands full with the Suns in this matchup. The Nuggets are very balanced, but they're going to have their hands full in this matchup. Jokic's going to be guarded in a different way in this playoff series, I think. And the setup that they're looking at right now is going into the Suns. They'll have home court advantage, which is good for them. But I think the Suns are the better team there, and that's a problem for the Nuggets. Again, problematic for the NBA because one of their two best teams that I thought coming in, the Nuggets and the Suns, are now matched up against each other in the playoffs, and one of them is going to be eliminated. Come back to the other side of the bracket. This is, I think, the one the NBA is really hoping for. You would have the Lakers take on the Golden State Warriors if things go well. Both of them are involved in playoff series right now. The Lakers are tangled up at 3-2, and I believe the Warriors are as well. So you have a situation where they have to come through. But if they do come through, that's going to be a marquee matchup with Curry and his crew down there in Golden State, shooting the ball from the perimeter, playing fast on offense, trying to make the veteran lineup of Anthony Davis and LeBron James get up and down the floor a little bit more than they're used to, possibly in a series that can have some wear and tear and knock you down a little bit. So I think that's going to be a great series. I think that's going to be really interesting. For the NBA, I think that would be a marquee series. Having LeBron James go up against Curry and his crew out in Golden State would be absolutely fabulous. It's locked into the Golden State, so one of them comes out. But then as you go into the next round after that, and we'll be able to talk about that next week because this is going to take some time because even these two series on the West Coast haven't even been resolved yet. I think the NBA is hoping they get resolved that way, but the Warriors and the Lakers would be a really, really good matchup for that. I think that as you move forward, there's some room for some upsets here and there, but I think whoever wins in those brackets where I think they have the two best teams, for example, when you have the Celtics playing the Sixers, they'll get either the Heat or the Knicks, whoever wins that series. I think that favors them well because they're both going to be, you'll be playing against a team that was, in a 5 or lower seed, most likely a 4 or lower seed, and that's a pretty good matchup to go into the finals of your conference with. And I think the same thing could happen on the West Coast as well, although the Suns, to me right now, seem to be stepping up to be the dominant team. But if the question out in L.A. is you have a two-man kind of operation there with LeBron and Anthony Davis. They're two of the best in the game. LeBron actually looked really, really spry and young out on the court the other night. He put up a monster game. Anthony Davis is also playing very, very well, having been saddled with some injuries during the year, but he's playing absolutely great too. And so I think that's, going to really, really set up well going into that final game for them. So the Suns, and Nuggets, whoever takes that's going to be a good opponent. But again, they'll be going at a team that was either a 5 or lower seed, a 4 or lower seed in the Lakers or the Warriors. Although The regular season, is very different than the playoffs, and seeing the Golden State Warriors at any time or seeing the Lakers at any time, that's no big deal. That's going to be a tough series, and so I think that a lot of this will also play out to see about who's able to take care of their opponents in due fashion, and also then be able to get some rest. You're looking at the Sixers right now, having swept the Nets. The Nets, are thinking about a broom change right now. They're thinking about a name change right now to the Brooklyn Brooms. So I think the sweep there was a little surprising, but Philadelphia wanted the rest. They came in, played really, really well, and took care of all their business. So I was excited about all of that. I think the NBA is well positioned to have a good ride home into June and finish up this season in classic fashion. I think that there's high level basketball being played in the NBA playoffs right now. The competition is fierce. The little battles you see, like Dylan Brooks and LeBron going on right now, the trash talk and all the other stuff that goes on. It's exciting. It's pretty cool to see right now. Also, the younger players in the league kind of battling the more seasoned players that have been around for a long time, have those championships, and the younger players are now trying to come up and also get one of those championships themselves. Championships are elusive in the NBA, and it's very, very difficult to come by. When you have players who have multiple of them, it's really, really, it's incredible to watch. And LeBron, is one of those guys that has multiple rings. But right now, Pete, as promised, we want to try and switch gears. And again, I hope we make it through the time with everything we got here. But we are going to have the excitement all over town has been crazy about the show. It's been great. Great reception everywhere from people. They're really, really enjoying it. But this right now is probably going to be the most exciting part of the show so far for me.
All
because
right.
we now have our first, hopefully an annual, in the zone NBA draft. And I was talking to Ken before, and he says, you probably don't prepare as much as I have to for my show. And I said, well, actually on this one, I really did have to prepare a little bit. I had to really research. I had to go in and look at some things. And I had to put everything out onto the table in order to reassemble it. And it was really cool to watch because there's some people in these mock drafts that are out on the television and out on YouTube and out online everywhere. You can see a mock draft just about everywhere. They have things a little bit convoluted, if you ask me. And then what I used in this first round, because we're going to be able to go through this a little bit and adjust it and amend it as we go through, because there'll be other tournaments coming up now where the best of the best will come to the combines, work out against each other. And in probably the most notable combine story of all time is Scottie Pippen, who went into the combine relatively unnoticed and didn't really have a high draft position and wound up being a lottery pick after going into the combine and just knocking people out for 3 or 4 days, changing NBA scouts' minds right on the spot, which is the exciting part about it too. But in this NBA draft, before we even get into the draft, I want to examine what we did and how I did it and in what fashion we did it. I examined in this first round only NCAA players. And so we will also, in this segment, also talk about the 4 impact players that are out there that are not currently in the NCAA. They're in the G League or in the Overtime Elite League. We'll talk about them. Very, very difficult to get a synopsis on them, to draw a great comparison with them because they don't play in the NCAA against all the other great players. That being said, the 4 players that we're going to talk about later are, of course, Victor Wembanyama, and in the zone right now is not sold with Victor Wembanyama as the number 1. We talked about possibly Toronto getting into the lottery. I think that could happen. I think also then they would certainly draft him number 1. I think most NBA general managers right now are a little bit petrified, and they're a little bit in paralysis because it would take a really, really brave person to say no to this amazing talent. But if I was in that seat right now, I'm sitting there saying, no, he's not the number 1 pick in the draft. He belongs in the draft, but I think there's other players that might be better as a number one. And I say that because of the physicality of the NBA, and that's where, with Victor, that's where I'm most concerned.
Yep.
Scoot Henderson is a point guard, plays in the G League. He is about as good of athlete as you will see play basketball. He also has a tremendous skill set for basketball. The issue that I might have with Scoot Henderson is that he plays, with a level of almost mass destruction. Where I could see him getting hurt because he plays so hard and his athletic ability is so amazing. But some guys play on their skill level, other guys play on their athleticism, and the guys that play on their athleticism have a tendency, in my opinion, to get hurt a little bit more than the other guys do. So then you're also talking about the Thompson twins. Great band from back in the 90s as well. I love them. But these are two twins that are really intriguing. They have 6'9", 6'10" skill set. They can handle the ball. They can shoot the ball. But again, it's so difficult to see how they would be because I haven't seen them play against the other players. So what we're going to do for right now is we're going to hold those four gentlemen out of this draft right now and then integrate them later at a different time. I don't think Wembanyama is the number one, but I certainly think one of those four aforementioned could slide into the number one. I think at this point a little bit it also looks in the NBA possibly what are you looking for? What do you need at that moment? And right now, until May 26th occurs, we don't know the drafting order. We don't actually know who has the number one pick. Once they validate that, once they do that lottery, then we'll have a really good idea about that number one pick and who needs what on their roster, and does Victor Wembanyama fit into that?
Right, because now you're just grading based purely upon talent. You're not grading fits for teams because you don't know what the teams are.
It's amazing to me how some of the grading has done. And if you look at a lot of the mock drafts, what you'll see is, I say this all the time, but it's like the Eagles song, The New Kid in Town.
Mm-hmm.
It's loaded with players that didn't play in the NCAA tournament, European players or players from other countries, and then also freshmen. So there's not really a lot of deference given to the players that stay in the NCAA for 3 and 4 years and have dominant careers, set records, and do it. I'll give you a little bit of an example of what I'm talking about. I was sitting with a general manager of an NBA team one time, and we were at a banquet, and he was being honored at the banquet. During the dinner, him and I sat next to each other, and he asked me what I thought about the upcoming draft. And I said, you're not in position to be able to help yourself like I think that this could help somebody. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, what I would do is go home, look at your roster, and trade whoever you thought on that roster you could trade in order to get up and draft Dwayne Wade. And he says to me, our guys don't have him that high. Our guys aren't that high on him. And I said, you should go back and talk to your guys then, because they're incredibly short-sighted when they're looking at this young man. He went to Marquette for 4 years, led them to the Final Four, was absolutely dominant out on the floor in the Final Four at a big-time level. And I think that matters. That's the synopsis. That's the snapshot that you're looking for to say, can it translate to the next level? Now, that being said, the NBA is completely different than the NCAA. What a player needs to have in the NBA in order to be successful is very, very often quite different than what a player needs in the NCAA to be successful. And you've seen a number of different players over time that had trouble making that adjustment to the NBA. Christian Laettner didn't have a great NBA career, but he's one of the greatest NCAA players of all time. Grant Hill, another Duke player, had an unbelievable career at Duke but didn't translate. Bobby Hurley, another Duke player, another great career down at Duke, but it, again, didn't translate into the NBA. So what we want to do is we're going to go right into it now, and we're going to go through it fast, but we're going to make some really, really shocking calls here, all right? And it starts with our number one. I don't understand what some of the NBA general managers and the prognosticators who are out on the wings are talking about sometimes with some of these players. It looks like they just look at certain things there, and rather than watch the game, look at the player, see how he interacts, and see who really can be dominant in the NBA, because in the NBA you have to have the body. In the NBA you have to have the game. And in the NBA you have to have a little bit of swagger. You have to have confidence. You have to be one of the most highly confident people on the planet to believe that you can play in the NBA with all the great players that are in there and that have been in there. And so those three things really, really matter. Now, those are also balances, right? Big against little, skilled against unskilled, great shot blocker. Marcus Camby wasn't a great skilled player, but he lasted in the NBA for many, many years because he was an unbelievable shot blocker. And so I think that also gets lost when you're looking at some of these drafts when they're just data driven and you're just looking at this thing from one side. So without further ado, in the zone with their first pick in the NBA 2023 draft, we are going to take Zach Edey from Purdue, 7'3", 285 pounds. Most people don't even have this young man in the first round. I don't understand that. He averaged 23 points a game and 15 rebounds. Absolutely dominated the landscape of college basketball this year. When I say 7'3", 285, he's bigger than Yao Ming is when Yao Ming came into the league physically. And so there is some question about, can he get up and down? Is he going to get lost in the speed and the shuffle of the NBA? I think a team that takes him and really builds around him is going to have a really good player because he's highly skilled. And if you stand on one side of him, you're 3 feet from the other side of him. You're 4 feet from the other side of him. And so all he has to do is post up. I see him being similar, not with the same athletic ability, but, Shaquille O'Neal was just big and physical, and you couldn't do anything with him. I think this young man, again, with all the other players out there, I'm going to give Zach Edey a look because I actually love this kid, and I think he's ready to go. I think his work ethic is terrific. With the number 2 pick, we're going to select Brandon Miller from Alabama, 6'9", 200 pounds. His splits are 29 and 2-3. What does that mean? He averaged 20 points, he averaged 9 rebounds, and he averaged 2.3 assists per game. Those are the 3 areas that are most critical when you look at if somebody's a good player. And if you look at somebody who's a really good player, they'll show up in all 3 of those categories significantly. And I think Miller does that. I know he had some off-court stuff, but in the zone, we're not here to prejudge people. We're here to look at the basketball talent, let the general managers of the NBA sort that out. But Brandon Miller, 6'9", 200. I hate to do this because people say, well, who does he remind you of? He reminds me a little bit of Kevin Durant. He reminds me a little bit of a long forward that can stretch the floor but also take it to the basket, dunk it on you. He's very athletic. And I think what happens with the NBA, though, you have to really do your homework on people, and you have to make sure that everybody's all set physically, mentally, socially. All of those things matter. Number 3 pick, we're going to take Taylor Hendricks from the University of Central Florida. This is going to be a big surprise to people. Some people have him lower than this. I really like this young man. He's 6'9", 210 pounds, and his splits are 15, 7, 1.4 in assists. Passes the ball pretty good for a big man. But if you'll notice in our draft, we believe there's one thing in basketball that you can't teach, and that's height. And the length of the NBA players right now has increased. The speed of the game has increased. So people that can get up and down the floor, this young man shoots the ball very well from the outside as well. So I think it's a bit of a stretch to put him in at number 3, but I like him there because of his size, his athleticism, and his upside. Number 4, we're going to shoot with Ohio State, Bryce Sensabaugh. This is the first person that you're going to see in the NBA that has an NBA-ready body. He is big, he's physical, he can move well, shoots it well. I wonder about his ability because in basketball world, we call that guy a bully sometimes. He's just going to get on the block and knock people around. And sometimes, like Sonoga, when you get to UConn, he's so physical in college. But then when he gets to the pros, he's not that physical because everybody's so physical. And so I think that could be a possibility here with Mr. Sensabaugh. He's 6'6", 235. I really like his abilities. But look at his splits. For a freshman, he averaged 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 1.7 assists. I like that. I think that's probably led scoring in the Big Ten with that. With the number 5 pick again, we're going to knock some people out with this stuff because we look at upside, we look at what the future looks like for some of these players. This young man reminds me more of Marcus Camby than anybody I've seen in a long time. Derek Lively from Duke, 7'1", 215 pounds. I'd like to see him put on some weight. I'd like to see him get bigger, but sometimes with players of that length, it's not that easy to put on. They have very high metabolisms. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar never put on any weight, and he lasted in the NBA for a very long time. But I really like Derek Lively, and people have him much, much lower in this draft than I think they should. He's 7'1". He can block shots like crazy. He went to Duke, and I think his abilities on the defensive end, his splits are 9 and 9. They're not great, but I like him. And I think he has things that somebody else in this draft doesn't have. He's 7'1", and he can run like a deer. With the number 6 pick, we're going to take G.G. Jackson of South Carolina, 6'9", 215 pounds. He can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball. He can score off the dribble, and he can also take the ball all the way to the basket and finish strong. So I really, really like him in this pick. Again, people aren't sold this high on him. And again, when we throw in the aforementioned 4 players of Henderson, Wembayana, and the Thompson twins, that's going to bump each one of these players down a little bit probably, because I do see all of those players at least being in the top 8. And so that you can factor that in. So when we're looking at G.G. Jackson at 6, he's probably more like a 10. But right now I like this young man. 17-6, 1.0 are his splits. 6'9", 215, and he has guard skills. He's a lot like Aaron Jackson from UConn, but I think he has better offensive skills. So he's in the 6 hole. Number 7, again, we're bumping this young man up because we've watched him a lot. We think he has a good skill set, and this young man is NBA tough and ready. I think he has played in a high-level conference. Keontae George from Baylor, we're going to take with the 7th pick. He's 6'4", 185 pounds, so he's got a good body for a point guard position in the NBA. He's strong. He's physical. He averaged 19.5 and 3.5. That's a split I'm talking about. That's a good split. All right, at 19 points is really, really high. Probably one of the highest in the entire country. 5.2 rebounds for a point guard is really, really good. And then you go 3.5 on the assist total. Maybe a little higher you'd like to see him, but he's a scoring guard. He can do a lot of things, and I like Keontae George. He really has a really good skill set. But again, some of these are going to be surprises to people. This is me watching the tube all year long and watching these young men. And again, we reserve the right, after we watch some of the Portsmouth and Chicago pre-draft combines, to go back in and look and say, okay, now we've seen them play against each other, we're going to reevaluate, or say, wow, some of these young men really popped out and really, really showed something there that we didn't see before against great competition. So in that 8 hole, I really like this young man. His brother's already in the NBA. I think this is a bit of a sleeping giant that could happen in the NBA draft right here. I think he's highly skilled, highly versatile. It's Chris Murray from the University of Iowa. His splits are 28 and 2. He's 6'8", 225, left-handed. He reminds me of Tayshaun Prince a little bit, who played for the Detroit Pistons for a long time, but he's much better scorer than Tayshaun Prince was. Shoots the ball from the outside better. One thing that I worry about Mr. Murray is he's long and athletic, but his strength deficit could be a problem as well. Again, he's probably still growing a little bit, but I really like Chris Murray in there. Again, we go to the NCAA, we look at what you've done. And Ty Cobb always said, it ain't bragging if you've done it. This is a young man that I just don't see getting the accolades that I think he should. And in the 9 hole, I think this is a good place to have him. Again, he'll probably be more like 13, 14 when this all shakes out. But Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana is 6'9", 245 pounds. And he stuck around in the NCAA game before entering the NBA in order to get better, in order to be ready for this. I really like his skill set. I'd like to see him improve his outside shooting a little bit, but he's left-handed. He's a little bit like Derek Coleman in his tremendous wingspan, can get at the basket and dunk, do a lot of really, really good things. And genuinely, I've watched him be interviewed after some of the games. He genuinely seems like a wonderful young man. 6'9", 245. His splits are great too. 21, 11, and 4.2. Why not? Again, some of these people are looking at all these other guys. We're going to talk about some of the guys that are in almost everybody's first round NBA mock draft that did not make it in ours because we just don't think that they're ready for that. And that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later if we have time in the show. Number 10 hole, Jalen Wilson from Kansas. 6'8", 225. Incredible splits. 28, 2.2. I like him better than I like Jordan Hawkins. I know that's going to upset some UConn people, but that's the way we're rolling. Number 11, from Gonzaga, Julian Strother. He hit the big Noxzema shot against UCLA in the tournament. I love this young man. He's long. He can shoot. He can score a myriad of different ways. And I think if things go right in the draft combines for him, you might see this number change a little bit. Now he's in a 15 rung. You could see him jump a little bit. Played at Gonzaga, 6'7", 208 pounds. His splits are 17, 7, and 1.5. I like him a lot, and I especially love guys who hit big shots at big times, and certainly he did that. Number 12 hole, this is going to surprise a lot of people, I think, but this is just a gut instinct of mine because I watch basketball, and sometimes you watch a guy doesn't score all the time, but Andre Jackson from UConn, I'm going to take him in the number 12 hole. He's 6'6", 6'7". He's 210 pounds. Doesn't shoot it great, but if you want to think about somebody who he plays like a little bit like Ben Simmons because he can almost be a point guard. He has such amazing passing skills, and if you go back and watch UConn's run in the NCAA tournament, he was one of the guys that was absolutely fundamentally significant in that run. And I like his game. He's got good size. I'd like to see him again. What happens is, I'll tell you what happens sometimes at North Carolina and some of these other places when guys are going get ready to draft. They bring them back and they bring all their managers back. And pre-draft, they shoot 1,000 shots a day. I'd like to see Andre Jackson get in the gym and shoot 1,000 shots a day every single day between now and draft because I'd even move him up then. His splits aren't great, but they're solid. He's 8'7" and 5.2. 5.2 assists for a guy of that size is good. He's a great team guy. Loves to pass the ball, doesn't shoot it all the time. What's wrong with that? Okay, this young man, people have him higher. I'm not that sold on him, but I'm going to give him his due because he is an absolute elite shooter. Grady Dick from Kansas, 6'7", 195 pounds. Freshman, splits are good, 15, 5'7", and 1.8 on assists. He's a deadly shooter, really good. Where I have my issues certainly is in the physicality of the NBA game, and I don't know how he matches up on the defensive end with some of the great players in the NBA. But we're going to take him at 13. 14, they have this young man much higher than I do, Jerace Walker from Houston, 6'8", 220 pounds. He has great splits, 14, 9, and 2.4. I just think he's a little bit of one of that new kid in town candidate that I'm talking about, where he's a freshman, had a great year, played in a great program. But as I watched him a little bit, I'm looking forward to see him in some of the combines if I can, because his splits are good. But I'm not sold on him because he's much bigger and stronger than everybody else right now, and some of that will diminish as we go. So here's another one that I've pulled out that nobody has in their first round. I think this young man is definitely somebody you should look at in the early first round. Noah Clowney from Alabama, 6'10", 212 pounds. His splits are good, 13, 11, and 1.2. I really like this young man's upside. Upside means you may not like him in the NBA right this moment, but in 2 years, 3 years, he's going to be ready. If you look at Andrew Wiggins that's playing for Golden State right now, I think that's a pretty good analogy right there with Noah Clowney. But 6'10", 212 pounds, he runs the floor really well. What I think NBA people will be surprised about, Mr. Clowney shoots the ball from three-point range better than they think. 16, Maxwell, bang, Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine, 6'9", 6'7", 195 pounds. His splits are great, 19, 6, and 3. My question with him is the level of competition that he's seen. That's why I'm excited to see him match up against the better competitions that he's had coming up in the combines. And if he does well there, then we'll bump him up. But he has good splits, but we're going to keep him at 16. 17, Jalen Hood-Schifino, our second IU Hoosier that we're going to draft, 6'6", 213. His splits are good. He's a big guard. He has a big body for the NBA. He's 6'6". He can handle the ball. He can shoot the ball. 4 assists for a guy 6'6" is pretty good. He's 14, 4, and 4. So he shows up in those categories pretty strong. I like him too. He can shoot the ball. I think if he gets into a situation where the NBA is looking for a long point guard, somebody that can be big matchup problem for people, I think he's not bad. We're going to go to the Atlantic 10 now, Pete. 18 slot. We're going to go with Deron Holmes from Dayton, 6'10". Again, you can't teach somebody to be 6'10". 225 pounds, 19.8 and 1.8. We don't need to go through the litany of Atlantic 10 players who have gone into the draft, kind of been overlooked, and turned out to be really, really good players. Andrew Nicholson from St. Bonaventure, Marcus Camby from UMass, the young man Goodwin, who was at St. Louis last year, is doing well in the NBA. So
I think A10 players have a lot of grit and a lot of work ethic that helps them and helps them get into the NBA, whereas they're willing to put in the time to get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get to if you go to Duke and you sit on the bench, yeah, you might get drafted still. But if you go to UMass and you average 23 points a game, you're going to get noticed.
Yep,
you're going to get that notice. That's what I think. When I talk about recruiting, I always talk about the divergent path. Number 19, this young man again has good size, good skill, has an NBA body that's pretty ready. 19 is Colby Jones from Xavier, 6'6", 207 pounds. Plays a little bigger than that, but his splits are really good. 15, 6, and 4.7. For somebody of that size to have almost 5 assists a game, 15 points and 6 rebounds, I think that's really good. And I think Xavier has been a good spot for pros, has been able to really catapult some players into the pros. So I take a look at that as well, the school where they come from. Sean Miller's prepared a few pros as well. 20 is Terrence Shannon from Illinois. This young man's been in about 2 or 3 different schools. I've watched him bounced around, but I really like him. He's 6'7". He can shoot the ball. He defends. He's strong, can handle it. And I think he's draftable in this area in that 24, 25. Most people don't even have him in the first round. I really like him. 19, 5, and 3 are his splits. Again, we'll see what happens when the combines start. This young man, I think at 22, Kobe Brown of Missouri, 6'8", 250. He probably has some of the most ability to really, really jump in the combine. I think I watched him play during the year, and I didn't get a great chance to see him a ton, but I did watch him play during the year, and I said, "Wow, he's a load. He's going to be a problem even in the NBA because he's a big, strong young man." He's 19, 7 and 7, 7.7 and 3.1. 3.1 assists for a big man passing the ball is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think that's good, but 19 points and almost 8 rebounds. Those are really good numbers. So I think if Kobe Brown goes to the combines and does well, we might be talking about moving him up a little bit. 21, Kevin McCullough from Kansas, 6'6", 210 pounds. 12, 8, and 2.8 are his splits. But I really like this young man late first round because he absolutely can really, really shoot the ball deep. And I think that's important in the NBA now with all the spread offenses that they're going to. But I don't think a lot of people will have him in the first round. In the 22 hole, we have DeAndre Williams from Memphis. This is a young man that I think I'm interested in watching him go through, but I liked watching him through the year. I think he's better than 22. Like if you add in the other 4, you talk about 26. Could be a little bit better. He's 6'9", 205 pounds. 17, 8, and 3 are his splits, but this young man can also shoot the 3 ball. And I really like that. When you have size and length and you can shoot, I think your chances of surviving in the NBA are better. I'm interested to watch him go through. I think DeAndre Williams, the last 2 names that we called, could do some damage in a combine and raise their level. 23, I don't even know why I have this guy at 23 because his numbers are off the charts, but his name, I'm going to butcher his name. It's Azulis Tubilis, and he's from Arizona, 6'11", 245 pounds, very skilled international player. His splits are incredible, 19, 9, and 2.0. There's nobody that plays major college basketball with splits like that we have at that 27, 28 row. It just doesn't happen. I think people are sleeping on him, and again, those last 3 names I think are names that have the ability to climb. 6'11", and he can shoot the ball from outside. He can handle the ball, passes the ball pretty good. 24, I maybe because I just wanted to say his name, but because I really like his game too. It's Boogie Ellis. Okay, anybody that plays basketball that's named Boogie, you know they're serious about basketball. They wanted this young man to be a great player. USC, 6'3", 185 pounds. He'll have to play the point in the pros, which I think he's more than capable of making the transition over. But his splits are really good: 17-7, 3.2, and 3.1. Showed up in a lot of different categories well. I think USC had a great year. I think Boogie Ellis was one of the reasons. And if you watch him play, he's tough. I would pick him before some of the other guards that are being listed here that other people are very high on that we'll talk about if we have a second at the end. Nick Smith from Arkansas. People are really, really high on this young man. I'm just not. 6'5", 185 pounds. They have him somewhere in the lottery pick. His splits are good: 17, 2.3, and 2.4. I just think Arkansas plays a style and a brand of basketball that's really, really difficult to handle in college. And then when these young men get to the pros, I think it might be a little bit different. But again, there's two guys from Arkansas in the draft that I'm not in love with, either one of them. But that could prove me wrong. 26, the UConn faithful will now be happy. Jordan Hawkins, 6'5", 195, unbelievable tournament. But his splits are good too. He averaged 19 points a game, and that's unbelievable. 4 rebounds and 1.6 assists. You're not going to get a lot of assists out of this guy because he's a guy who loads it up and shoots it. But I really, really think, at 19 points a game and doing what he's done in that tournament was really significant. I think that's a proving ground. I think it's significant. Where do I have some drawback with him? I think physically. I don't know that he has an NBA body right now. I don't know that he's physically ready to take on what happens over that 82-game schedule, almost 100 games right now. But I'm going to take him in the 26 hole. 27, another great name, Jet Howard from Michigan. 6'8", 215 pounds. His splits are good: 16, 3, and 2. A guy I'm not sure about in the first round. I could see him, if he doesn't do well in the combines, easily slipping into the second round. Here's another name for you that nobody has on their draft board. I love this young man, his upside. I think he has a tremendous NBA opportunity. 28 is Umar Ballo from Arizona. 7 foot, 260 pounds. His splits are good: 14, 8, and 1. When I look at real big players, I want to know, can they catch? That's the first thing I want to know. How are their hands? And these two gentlemen out of Arizona, Tubelis and Ballo, both very, very highly skilled. Ballo, the only concern I have with him is his hands. Can he get up and down the NBA floor and do that kind of stuff that I think changes the game a little bit, especially if you're bigger. But he can run, he can block shots. I like him. Again, you can take all the little guards in the draft that you like. I don't think that they've had a tremendous impact. When you look at an NBA player that's been successful over the course of the years, they're generally between 6'4" and 6'8", and they have skills that are complementary to all parts of the game. But we're going to take at 29. A lot of people have this young man much higher. I don't. Arkansas, Anthony Black, 6'7", 195 pounds. I think that's why people are excited about him as much, because of his guard skills and his size. At 6'7", 195 pounds. I just don't like his ability to run a team right now. And I think that, the way Arkansas played with their size and their physicality gives one look at things in the NCAA, and then when you get into the college ranks, it's different. I don't know. His splits are good: 13, 5.2, and 4. Really good splits, but I don't have him as deep in the draft as everybody else does. All right, Pete, we're coming up on the last pick in the draft, and I like this young man because he's a big man that can really shoot the basketball. Jack Nunge from Xavier. He's 7 foot, 245 pounds. His splits are great: 14, 8, 2.1. And the one thing that I think the NBA people should recognize with that is that he has shot 40% from three-point range as a big man. Xavier's offense is a very spread offense. They keep the floor very spread. And he steps out and shoots the three quite a bit. And I've watched him play. I've seen him live. And so I think that that's amazing. I don't know how we're doing for time, Pete. I think we're getting pretty close to the end here.
About 11 minutes left.
11 minutes left. Okay, so that concludes our first round. And that's where we're going to leave it for right now. We will include at different times, we'll include Victor and Scoot and the Thompson twins at a different time. Here's some people, some names that I think, if you're looking at, can they jump into the first round? Will they be drafted at all? Will they be in the second round? Here's some people I just want to see some more from. And again, Cam Whitmore is somebody that everybody has in the top 10 from Villanova. I don't even have him in the first round. I'd like to see him do more. Kason Wallace from Kentucky, same thing. He's in the first round. He's in the first top 14 picks of everybody in everybody's draft. I don't have him in the first round. Again, sorry, Kason, but I want to see more. Oscar Shibwe, another big man from Kentucky. And if you want to throw out a caveat to this whole thing, Kentucky's players have performed very, very well in the NBA for them. Kentucky, probably with John Calipari having their players up there right now, some of the players at Kentucky are really, really having great careers. So you have to throw that in there. But with Kason and Oscar, I just didn't see it this year. I think they're a little bit overrated. Everybody likes Dariq Whitehead from Duke. I think Lively's a much better prospect than Whitehead is. And I think if Filipowski came into the draft, which it appears that he's not, Kyle Filipowski, I think we'd be looking at bumping some of these people down as well. But Victor Wembayana, I apologize, Victor. I just don't have you as a number one pick right now. I think physically the NBA is going to be a challenge for you. A couple of other names that you might want to look at going into the second round. Maybe these guys can slip in. Who knows if they get drafted at all, but I like these guys. I like Sanogo from UConn. I think he'd be an excellent late first or early second round pick. His body, his physicality. He plays hard and he gets after it. He's got great hands. When you talk about big men and you talk about hands, you talk about he has great hands. Now, what happens in the NBA also is you run into certain guys that get caught into what it's called interpositional. Okay, and I think that could happen to Sanogo, meaning in the NBA, he's not going to be a 5-man. He's only big enough to be a 4-man. At UConn, during the NCAA, especially with some of the complementary bigs that they had there, he was able to get away with that and his size. But is he going to be able to play center in the NBA? I don't think so. Is he good enough to step out and be a 4-man in the NBA? I don't know. So in the NBA as a 5-man, probably not. In there as a step-out 4-man, I don't think so. Maybe as a roster spot somewhere, certainly. Here's a young man that I like. I'd want to see more of. He's the only guy in the Mountain West to have a triple-double during the league, and it's Morris Udize. He's 6'8", 6'9", very physical player. Again, like Sanogo, you don't know if he's just bullying people in the NCAA, and then he gets to the NBA, and he has a whole different skill set. I don't know how that works. And so with him as well, I'd like to see him show up at camp. I'll have a chance to evaluate him further and then move him up. But I like him, and certainly in a second round, I would certainly draft this young man somewhere in those 2 rounds. We can talk about that as well. Ryan Kalkbrenner from Creighton is another big 6'11", 7-foot player, runs the floor well, highly skilled. I'm not sure if he's coming into the draft or not. Another year in college might help him a little bit. Colin Castleton from Florida, another 7-footer, can run the floor, can get up and down, again, physically. I don't know how Castleton's going to fit in. Adem Bona, another good big man, second-round pick for sure out of UCLA. I think that he will certainly wind up getting drafted and might be able to stick in the NBA because he has that length and he has that athleticism. But I think that the draft is certainly about what the team is looking for at that moment, but also I think we're offering deference to the players that actually go into the NCAA and do the job there so that we can compare them against each other so that we can draw comparisons to each other. And so I think that that's really important. A couple of things that I'd like to see happen with a synergy between the NCAA and the NBA is I'd like to see them drop the one-and-done rule. And so we've talked about Governor Baker here a number of different times and some of the things we'd like to see them do. But I think that would really be something that would benefit all of the players that are out there, certainly, to have the ability to go in and get drafted. Certainly, as I talk about on the show, I like to see players go into the NCAA and get tested what happens when they get tested sometimes is that the test fails. And they could have gotten drafted as a high school player, and the NBA would have paid them millions of dollars in a guaranteed contract. Instead, they wound up going to college. Everybody got a really good look at them, and then all of a sudden, instead of being one and done, they wind up staying 3 or 4 years and possibly winding up in Europe, never getting drafted at all. So there's some of that as well. But I think in a free market arrangement that we have in this country, I think it's consistent with allowing players to ply their trades and asking the NBA, maybe the NCAA, to participate a little bit in this, but to make better decisions about the players. If you have a slate of players that are out there, pick the best ones. When you make mistakes, you have to own up to that. Problem is that these are $1 million mistakes, and these contracts are guaranteed, and so it becomes a little bit problematic where you have everybody flooding the zone. Much like the transfer portal, I think if people didn't have to go to college, you'd see a lot different numbers in the draft numbers. The second piece I'd like to see the NBA do, the NBA at one time had 10 rounds of draft, and that's a lot. But as we're going into the NFL draft right now, I mean, that thing's like, it's easier to have a pope selected than it is to go through an NFL draft. And I think what you have with the NBA is they were at 10. Then they went all the way down to 2. And that allows the teams to invite certain players to camps and everything. But I always thought it was a nice honor to get drafted and to have that. So I think there was they moat jumped, as you will say, because when you moat jump, that means you were in one position, but then you jumped all the way over to the other side without fully comprehending that there was a lot of ground in between there that you could have stood on instead of going all the way to the other side. So when I say that moat jump, the moat jump went from 10 rounds down to 2 rounds. I think the ground in between was 5 rounds. Just like they moat jumped on the NIL thing, where now people are getting all sorts of crazy deals and contracts when the opportunity to put up a decent working wage for these young men was there, and to put up the decent working wage for these young women was there as well in an equitable fashion. Right now what you have is a wild, wild west show, and we alluded to the fact that the schools aren't even the ones paying the bill. And that's what more infuriating than anything, is the school's not even on the hook for the NIL. They get to keep all the television money, they get to keep all the Big Ten and the SEC money, but then none of it gets invested back into the student athlete. Less and less and less is getting invested back into the student athlete. And the last piece that you might want to look at is, if you're paying somebody $600,000 to go to your university, do they really still need an athletic scholarship? They can pay their own tuition, assumedly, because they can't qualify for financial aid anymore, because now they have a job that pays them $600,000. And so that's the other piece of it now, too, is you're starting to pay people. Are you going to make the individuals who get paid and go into a certain income bracket save the scholarships for other people, spread the scholarships into ice hockey and field hockey and baseball and all the other sports that get underfunded? You can easily do that. I don't see it happening that way, but I would like to see some of those things occur. So there's a whole lot on the landscape that could happen. But right now, the game in the NCAA, I think, has had some issues with the turnovers that they have, and the turnovers are in the NIL with the transfer portal, everybody moving around. Nobody knows what their roster is going to look like. There are only 3 teams in all of the 363 teams that have nobody that's in the portal. There's only 3 teams. And if I could remember them, I want to say it's Purdue,
Wow.
UCLA, and one other school that I had. It's on one of the cards that I've went through already. I'll never find it, most likely, Pete. Oh, there it is. Duke, UCLA, and Purdue. Those are the 3 schools. Everybody else has somebody that's popped into the portal.
So I wonder if they're not allowing their players to do it. Can they stop them?
I don't think they can stop them, physically stop them, but you can certainly have a certain measures in place, coercive measures in place that say, we don't want you putting your name in there. And if you do put your name in there, we're going to consider that you're not with us. And so at that moment, that's what's going to lead other schools to say, okay, your scholarship's done. Your financial aid, all of the stuff that you're here, as soon as you put your name into the portal, it's over.
Right.
We're going to pull it.
Yeah.
And so when we have guys putting their name in there, they have to put it in March. You got to put it in April. They're most likely not going to pull their scholarship for that year, but they're certainly not going to keep them on scholarship for the rest of the year, the rest of the years that they could be there. And so it's tumultuous, really. It's turned everything upside down. I don't know if it was by design, but what you had was coaches on wiretaps being caught in serious violations, and the NCAA's answer was well, that's not a violation anymore. So we'll see. I think the NBA playoffs are going to be really exciting as we close out this week, Pete. We'll have more to talk about next week, but again, take some time during the week to get out and take a walk around this beautiful neighborhood we have here. The weather's getting better. Get out and really enjoy this. I want to say to everyone who watches our show, thank you, and spread it around. Help some people see the show. It's on YouTube. We have Twitter. We have Instagram. Jump on In the Zone with us, and we'll see you next week. Take care, Pete. We'll see you.